Hello, my name is Thornscale and welcome to my workshop. In this video, we'll be finishing up my first game ever. It's honestly been surprising how much easier it is to get into game dev than people think. If you missed how this all started, I'll have a link to the first video in the description below. Now in the last video, we left off with the AI. I made an easy, but kinda janky system using blueprints. Then a member of my community, Icy, suggested I try using behavior trees, which sounded like the answer to all my problems. Until tragedy struck. Turns out, the computer I was using couldn't actually handle Unreal anymore and its GPU died, making it clear I needed a strong computer. So in the meantime, I dusted off my next best computer and tried messing around with something simpler, an RPG Maker game. I tried making a survival game with hunger, thirst, and collecting resources, but then that got set aside also because I got a new computer! One that can actually run Unreal 5 with all the bells and whistles. So of course, I immediately sped up the golem's ball form again and made the island much bigger, going from a map this big to a map this big. Even the lava pool is bigger. One of the first things I added to this new island was a breakable wall. No sound yet, but we'll get there eventually. I was also able to get the AI and combat worked out, though at this point there were still a few bugs. So far, the game is working, but it's felt kinda lifeless, so I added denser foliage and ambient sound, like bird sounds, waves, and lava. But the denser foliage is a bit too much even for my new computer. The Quixel Bridge stuff is beautiful, but it's complete murder on the frame rate. Now, in the last video, I mentioned that a plan like this was probably too much to do for my first game, and I wanted to simplify it. So the new islands map looks like this. Totally different, no similarities. Okay, so I may have let some scope creep happen, but we're not going to talk about that. At this point, I also added in music. It's just one song that plays automatically, but it's a nice start. And about those breakable walls, I couldn't figure out how to get them to play a sound when they broke as chaos geometry objects, so my temporary fix was to put a plane in each wall that played the sound effect when the golem passes through. Not a great fix, but fortunately, I'll get to the real solution later. The foliage was really starting to get to me, and it was clear it had never run as well on a mid-level PC anyway, so I stripped the whole world as naked as a hairless cat, both on land and in the water. I continued working on combat, refining the AI, adding a crumbling sound effect when the golem dies. Up until this point, the game had no real menu system or even way to exit without force quitting. So that was the next step, a start menu. And I quickly realized that Unreal doesn't actually package all of your levels by default, which is probably a good thing considering all the testing maps I made. But at least the exit game button works. Anyway, that was a quick fix, just adding in the missing levels. And my pause menu worked too, bonus points. I added a basic credits menu that'll get cleaned up and expanded on later. It's going to be a long list in the end because I'm planning on relying on the marketplace for a while until I get more comfortable with Blender. I've done some stuff in Blender in the past, but practicing more with it is pretty high on my to-do list. And I got an icon made. I know it's a super simple thing and it's kind of stupid, but seeing my game's icon down in the menu bar feels really good, like it's starting to become a real game. Even though this is just a small learning project and so won't have a proper tutorial, I wanted to give the player some sort of idea of what was going on. So I tossed these stone tablets around the starting area to get the player going. And also a crab to beat up in relative safety. I also decided on my final boss, a corrupted golem made by the same person who made the player golem. Though at this point, I just have it basically using the crab AI and sound effects. Now here's where I got really excited. I figured out how to get rid of that stereotypical Unreal kind of slightly glossy look by messing around with lighting and roughness and specular values on all my textures to create a more saturated and less shiny look. And then it was finally time to add some foliage back in, but this time with a more stylized look to fit the game's new saturation levels. Though if you're curious what it'd look like with all the settings cranked up in the opposite direction, here you go. Everything looks wet or icy, which is probably a good thing to keep in mind if I ever do some rain in the game, which I most certainly will. Then it was time to choose some music that better fit each part of the map. And having the ocean without splashes felt a little too unnatural for me, so I found a splash pack on the marketplace I like, and spent some time learning about Niagara particles to tweak the pack. And really, I just love splashing in the water. We're in the final stretch. I cleaned up the UI and made the health bar better match my health pickups and the golem's eyes. I also sped up the golem's punch animation and removed its cooldown, so now the player punches flow better and combat is just more enjoyable. I also added a very basic sound options menu. I'll save something more advanced for the next learning project though. At this point, I finally got back around to the crashing wall sounds and moved past my janky hidden plane solution, and it turned out it was actually super easy. Just place your geometry collection into the world, then press this button over here, and boom, you now have an actor with an event graph you can do anything you want with. Here's what I use to get a sound to play when something breaks. Incredibly simple. And finally the boss, with his own music, sound effects, and attacks you need to avoid. But I'll save that for the players to discover. And there we have it, my first game. It's free to download on both itch.io and Ko-fi. If you give it a try, let me know in the comments below, or even better, join my Discord and we can have a chat about that indie game dev lifestyle. I'm planning on making a couple more small games this year to learn more about Unreal, as well as a few quick tutorials covering problems I encountered and how to get past them. So if you'd like to join me on this journey, please hit that subscribe button, and if you could toss a like and comment on the video too, it really helps a small channel like mine. Well, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!